Where might UCLA go if Adem Bona doesn't come back? What's going to happen? I'm not entirely sure, but I do have an idea who they've reached out to. A 6'11 product from the Midwest. Let's talk about them on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Locked On UCLA. Thanks for making it your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast. Download, listen, Apple, Spotify, wherever it is. It's on all the podcast platforms. Become an everyday listener. We've got some big content coming over the Memorial Day weekend because players have to decide if they're coming back or not. And watch this on YouTube, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube channel as well. So kind of diving in a little bit deeper here, I've been teasing for a long time. Adem Bona, Jalen Clark, a couple of UCLA basketball players have to make a decision coming up May 31st, whether they forego the NBA draft or they decide to stay in and become a professional basketball player, thus ending their collegiate careers. Clark looks like he might come back considering he's got a more devastating injury with the Achilles injury. Then you've got Adem Bona, who's got the injured shoulder, or the labrum injury, in which case we're going to kind of focus on him more today than, say, Jalen Clark. So who's that player UCLA might go after? Well, in my mind, I think what is important first is if Adem Bona decides to stay or go. And this also is going to couple with the fact that UCLA is interested in Adem Bona. This guy whom I'm about to mention, which I've just read from Inform, more of a North Dakota-based site. Hey, that's a hint right there. If they don't get Adem Bona, and or if Adem Bona decides to stay in the draft process and become a pro prospect fully, then they may not go after this guy. Those are the things they have to wait on. But initially, those are the things maybe holding up this recruitment, although who I'm about to talk about, Grant Nelson, North Dakota State 6'11 junior, hit the portal. He is currently going through the NBA draft process as well. And reading this article from Inform, posted May 25th, earlier in the morning, and he's had 33 schools reach out to him. Grant Nelson, he's got a list that includes San Diego State, Miami, Kansas, Villanova, Baylor, Gonzaga, UCLA, and Houston. So you've got Final Four participants, you've got national champions, and you've got a lot of blue bloods digging in at this coveted recruit. Anywhere from all the Power 5 schools, Power 6 schools, whatever it is in college basketball, are foaming at the mouth for this prospect in Grant Nelson, who's got 2 years of draft eligibility, technically will be a senior coming up, and may have to decide whether he wants to go to college basketball, pull out of the portal, go back to Fargo, stay in the portal, and then go to another school or go to the NBA draft. Seemingly, it looks like he will not go back to North Dakota State. Taking a look at his numbers from the last season, this is who is a 6'11", 235-pound prospect, could be listed at 6'10", depending on what site, what numbers, what height numbers you use. Had good numbers in college basketball last year. Grant Nelson, almost 18 points per game, 17.9 points per game, 9.5 rebounds, just over 2.5 assists, or 2 assists per game, nearly 2 blocks per game, and close to getting a steal per game on average. Is quote-unquote, according to 24/7 Sports, projected to be a high-impact piece on both ends of the floor. And you see a lot of that talk, right? Oh, Adem Bona, he's going to be someone who can play on both ends of the floor. Lazar Stefanovic, he's someone who can pass well, shoot the ball well. He's a guy that can play defense on both ends of the floor. Nelson was a ball handler at 6'10", 6'11", with a 17.5 assist rate last year. He shot 60% inside the arc, 27% from downtown, not particularly appetizing, but a 71% free throw shooter, listed as a playmaking 4, and could potentially be a rim protector that might earn him minutes at the 5. If he does come to UCLA, if UCLA for some reason recruits this player who is not maybe leaning towards UCLA, I haven't seen a lot of things, but this is a guy who could replace a Bona. Or if you get Mara, or if you don't get Mara and you have Bona, You get Nelson as a taller 4. You stick Bona as a smaller 5 as a rim protector. You let Nelson sneak out as the 4, Bona as the post, and that is how the Bruins could operate. That is only if, in this scenario, for this Devils Lake, North Dakota native who shows some playmaking skills, according to a Western Conference executive telling in this article I'm reading, he's a good college player, size, motor, athleticism, and while he isn't a great shooter for the modern big in the day and age, he can try and develop those skills coming up in recent times. So while there weren't any projections for UCLA necessarily coming up in recent years, in this article posted in May, the Inform article said UCLA's put out a feeler, and this article was dropped recently, and NIL might be a big impact thing for him, considering he can make a lot more money playing elsewhere from Fargo if he decides to continue his college career and stick in the transfer portal. While all indications show that Nelson wants to stay in the draft, if he comes back, test the draft again next year, then UCLA could be trying to get somebody who could replace a Bona, or if Mara's situation for some reason falls through, which while it's not solidified in anything I've seen yet, it could. You never know in this day and age with college athletics, and especially how they couldn't get the Turkish big man in over for the last season. This is somebody who in Grant Nelson could really affect the game. Some size, give UCLA some big-time size. Might not be 7'3" like Adem Bona, but you could have Nelson from North Dakota be that 6'10" 4, shift Bona to the, or keep Bona at the 5, and just add on from there with Kenneth Nuba coming in off the bench and the Bruins continuing to grow from that aspect. Nelson would have a couple years. Mara would probably be a one and done, is what all the expectations are. But that's just what's translating. This is something I'm thinking about for what UCLA could do. And I wonder what you guys think. If you want to hit it in the comments, if you want to go and hit us on at Locked On Bruins. Those are some thoughts I'm thinking of, because while Nelson continued to read all the stuff I've seen, he's got impressive test numbers at the combine, but when you go to the scrimmage, right? I talked about this with Amari Bailey. Hawk has had those good numbers, right? The ranginess, the athleticism, the vertical leap was good for Jaime Jaquez, but for Amari Bailey, it was the eye test because he was so good in the scrimmages, scoring a lot of points, showcasing the passing ability, the underrated passing ability from the guard position for Bailey, which he wasn't able to fully showcase, in my opinion, in his college game. Now you look to Grant Nelson, he is not somebody who fully got the opportunity to dominate the scrimmage, although he has good numbers coming from the Summit Conference, and some might say, well, the Summit Conference, what is that? That's where Oral Roberts came from, North Dakota State, usually a perennial power in that conference, but Grant Nelson, a 6'10" North Dakota product, who all the big schools are wanting to get after. If he comes back out of the draft, he is going to be a coveted prospect. At the recording of this podcast, there has not been any indication if he's at some school or if he's coming out of the draft or whatever it is. The preference is he may stay in the draft, and the Bruins might get Bona and Clark back, might get Adem Bona, and it might be all said and done. But the clock is ticking. All these players have to make incredibly tough decisions about their future, which could impact them one way or the other. NIL makes it a little bit easier to come back to school and make some more money, where you might flame out early on as a pro prospect with NBA dreams. Those are all things to think about. Grant Nelson is somebody who could replace Bona or Mara if either situation falls through. There's no way he would come to UCLA from what I see if you get all those guys and Clark doesn't come back. It's only if one of the two big men expected to go to UCLA, either coming back from the draft or coming over from Spain as a freshman in the class of 23. That is the only scenario where one or two scenarios in where Grant Nelson becomes a Bruin. Coming up, we're going to talk about a UCLA GOAT. I saw some stats on Twitter, and I just wanted to lay some down. I know it was, I don't really remember who tweeted it out, but we got to talk about a UCLA GOAT and hype him up as much as we still have him with us, because why not? Who is it? We'll talk about it coming up next after I tell you more about Birddogs. Birddogs are the most comfortable shorts. Anytime I get the opportunity to, I'm wearing Birddogs. I'm currently out of town, working hard, picking up heavy things, moving things out, sweating outside, and I'm wearing my Birddog shorts. They are extremely comfortable. They can be hot, humid. I could be chilling on the couch. They're super comfortable. I could be on a plane. I'm putting them on because they are extremely comfy. Next time a date happens, I'm going Birddog shorts. Not going with jeans, not going with anything else. I'm putting on Birddog shorts, which is why you must go right now to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege and get a Yeti-sized tumbler with your order as a bonus. Again, Birddogs, extremely comfortable. They make you look great. And hey, they're amazing. You can get your inseams. You just got to trust me on this one, guys. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege, and you'll thank me later. Cruising on in Locked On UCLA, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer messing with the wrong settings here if you're watching on YouTube. We just talked about Adem Bona and Jalen Clark, Adem Bona, Grant Nelson, and now we're cruising on into segment 2, talking more about who is this guy? Who is this GOAT, right? Who's this GOAT that we want to highlight today on Friday of all days, a flashback Friday? Well, I saw some numbers and some notes that I wanted to highlight for you guys. We might talk a little UCLA football too, but first I want to talk about some ridiculous numbers. You guys probably know these. Maybe you don't have them on the top of your head, and maybe you don't remember these numbers. They've probably been shown on a screen or uttered on other radio programs or podcast programs before. And from the College Basketball Report account, tweeted out about a day ago from the recording of this podcast, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who at the time was Luau Sindor when he was a UCLA Bruin. In 3 years, I just figured, hey, we have got to shout out Kareem for his numbers when he was before Kareem as a UCLA Bruin. 88-2 was his career record in 3 seasons because he couldn't play as a freshman. The all-important, joke, if he could play as a freshman, he would be the greatest basketball player of all time, even though these numbers already prove he is the greatest basketball, college whatever it is. You can have your debates about the Michael Jordans, LeBron James, Kobe, all these different things. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when he was a Bruin, as Luau Sindor, comes in 88-2 in 3 years at UCLA because freshmen couldn't play back in the day for whatever reason. Yes, there are reasons, but we're, in this day and age, now we have freshmen who play 1 year and they leave. 3-time national champion. That's I'm going to walk in, step in, dominate, and bounce. 3-time National Player of the Year. 3-time MOP. MOP stands for Most Outstanding Player, generally given to the best player in the Final Four, national championship game, whatever it may be. 3-time unanimous All-American first team. Unanimous. Remember that word. 3 times he played 3 seasons. It wasn't even a thing. And you know how a lot of times these days we get so bent out of shape talking about, oh, this guy was a unanimous this. Kareem, then Luau Sindor. Hey, he is so good, we cannot even debate his greatness, is what they're talking about back then. 3-time all-tournament team, 3-time all-Pac, 3-time Pac-8 champion, because remember, Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12, and then who knows what the conference's future is going to be in the future. What does that mean? It might crumble and fall when UCLA and SC go to the Big Ten. Who knows? It may not if things don't work out in the Big Ten. It's just, that's how it is. 3-time All-Pac-8 conference. And these are even some incredible numbers. I haven't even told you his averages. Those were just accomplishments. In 3 years, he averaged 26.5 points per game, 15.5 rebounds per game. Oh, by the way, he shot nearly 64% from the field. And he was just a young superstar budding to go become an all-time NBA great in his eventual pro future, whether it be with the Bucks, whether it be with the Lakers. He was an outstanding, as some might say, the GOAT. We talk about all these great players. My father will tell me all the time, hey, yeah, you got Michael Jordan was cool, but Kareem dominated at basically every level at multiple stops. If Kareem showed up, he was winning championships and the best player on the team because he was so dominant with the skyhook. And while I wasn't necessarily blessed with the opportunity to watch him live ever in my young lifetime, because I'm a youngster, those numbers pretty much stack up top to bottom as an absolute GOAT type material. I don't think, if you guys can put in the chat, yes, I know Bill Walton had a great career, all these other great Bruins, great basketball players. Who is your GOAT? I think these numbers are just ridiculous. I saw them, I sat, I pondered, 88 wins in 90 games in 3 seasons. Could you imagine anybody staying 3 years nowadays and doing that? 3 national championships, 26.5 points per game, 15.5 rebounds. He's just unstoppable. Let alone the freshman year stories where they're so dominant they could beat UCLA's other teams, right? So remember that when you think about greatest players of all time in basketball, athletes, whatever it may be. Remember, UCLA's got some of the greatest athletes. One of these days, I'm going to put up an episode about the greatest all-time athletes and rank them in UCLA history, and it's going to be impossible. You've got the greatest, most influential, most impactful players across all of college athletics who eventually went on to have great pro careers. And you guys may know who I'm talking about. We can have that list and debate another day. But Kareem has to stack atop the list amongst the short list, the Mount Rushmore of UCLA greats, men or women. But hey, I saw that. I got fired up. And for some reason, we're talking about GOAT potential. Cruising on into segment 3 of Locked On UCLA. And hey, what's going on with UCLA baseball? Well, their season is basically over. Not officially, because at the dropping of this podcast, the NCAA tournament field will not be released. They generally do that on Memorial Day, the Monday, early in the morning on, ESPN or 2 or 3, whatever channel they want to put it on nowadays. And UCLA went to the Pac-12 tournament, which was their only hope for making the NCAA tournament. No projection has them anywhere close to getting in the field. The Bruins went 1-1 in their 2-game Pac-12 tournament, and they lost one, blowing a lead yet again to USC. They're up 4-1 through 4 innings, gave up a couple of runs, and lost 6-4 to USC on May 23rd. The next day, they went up and dominated Washington. They blew them out 17-4, and in the Pac-12 tournament, because they want to save pitching, it was a mercy rule game where it finished in 7 innings. They won 17-4, but because of the Pac-12 tournament's stupid new rules that in not a double elimination format where they have 2-4 teams, you double elimination, you build your way to the championship game. No, we've got to include almost everybody and decide, hey, let's have 3 pools of 3, have 3 pool champions, and then pick the best of the rest of the teams to advance to a 4-team semifinal and eventual champion in single elimination style. If none of that makes sense, let's break it down this way. UCLA went 1-1. USC went 1-1. They're in the same pool. Washington went 1-1. They all beat and lost to each other. It was the only pool in A, B, or C in the Pac-12 tournament where none of the teams had an undefeated record. There was not a single team that went 2-0. Oregon went 2-0. Arizona, shockingly, the lowest seed to advance, the 8th team out of 11 Pac-12 teams, went 2-0 in a bracket that included ASU and Oregon State. So those were 2 pool winners. Then you had Washington, USC, and UCLA. And mind you, let's not forget, you have a pool winner, then you have the best runner-up, both advancing. So theoretically, UCLA with a 1-1 record had 2 chances to advance to the next round of the Pac-12 tournament. Well, that's not what happened because UCLA lost to USC despite dominating Washington. The Bruins found themselves on the short end of the stick. Stanford advanced despite losing to Oregon 8-6 in extra innings, blowing multiple leads late in that game, up at 1 point 6-2, 6-4 in the 9th inning. So if you're kind of confused still about this Pac-12 tournament, 3 divisions of 3 teams, 9 teams making a tournament already sounds stupid in an 11-team Pac-12 baseball season because Colorado doesn't have a baseball team. Then you have the top 3 winners advance and the runner-up advance. Not splitting it with 8 or making the top 4 teams or even having 6 teams advance. Arguably, sometimes you just wonder who organizes tournaments and thinks this is the best for TV, this makes the most sense. I'm ranting right now because I have to. What makes this make sense? I don't get it, and I never will. You can have 4 teams, 6 teams, heck, even 8 teams, which is a little bit ridiculous in a single elimination format. But pool play and then semifinals and a final, all to just have it happen in a week span. I'm not sure why you're making all these teams go to Scottsdale, Arizona, just to play 2 games, win 1, lose 1, and just have it go on a tiebreaker. It seems very dumb to do that. That's probably why the Pac-12 is crumbling and UCLA and USC are going to the Big Ten. That is literally the reason why all of this is happening. In the meantime, let's get back to the main point. My whole rant there aside, UCLA won and lost in the Pac-12 tournament to SC. They then beat Washington, but their season's done. It ends on a win. Not many teams can say in a postseason format that doesn't include an NIT of sorts that you win in the postseason and your season ends on a high note, a dominant high note, and your season ends. They are 28-24-1. They ended up 12-16-1 in conference, 19-9-1. UCLA, over the last, say, month of the season, just could not string any series wins together, losing since the UC Davis series in mid-April to SC 2 out of 3, to Stanford 2 out of 3, swept at home by Cal, who at the time of that was the worst team in the Pac-12, losing 2 out of 3 in a must-win series at home to Oregon State, losing 2 out of 3 to ASU, terrible injuries in the pitching staff, so much going against them this year, and yet it just did not work out for the Bruins. Lots of good, lots of bad. Just for UCLA, it ended up not being the case of anything good. The Bruins had some highlights. We'll go more in depth about that, but their season is over. Don't expect them to see them on Selection Monday, if you will, for college baseball. A winning record, yes, but a disappointing year for a team that had pretty decent statistics pitching-wise, okay bats this year. They just couldn't string together at the right time of the year with a stupid Pac-12 tournament. The Bruins baseball season is done. Softball's done. So all we got to do is wait for some football, basketball news, and all that good stuff to rile us up even more. More in-depth baseball kind of analysis going forward. UCLA lost. Sorry to end it on a downer this season, but they ended on a win with a winning record. That's all you can ask for, unfortunately. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, still imploring you to be an everyday listener for Locked On UCLA because Adem Bona, Jalen Clark, maybe Ade Mara, all either coming to UCLA or returning to UCLA within the next week, I think. Bona and Clark have to make that decision on May 31st. Mara, a little bit more complicated situation in terms of it's still a recruitment and international guy and everything in between. Otherwise, for UCLA, got to stick with Locked On UCLA, making this your first listen every day. Become an everydayer, baby. Become an everydayer, an everyday listener of the podcast. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer saying so long. Enjoy everything. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.